Case File 07 Thresh, narrated by Thalos Meyer, former Division 4 Archival Recovery Specialist. Officially declared dead 2007. Status: unknown. If you are hearing this, then at least one archive survived. Division 4 spent decades burying incidents they could not explain publicly. Entire coastlines erased from maps. Signals intercepted from empty oceans. Structures discovered where no structures should exist. Most records were destroyed. Some should have been. But Blackwater Point was different. The lighthouse did not reactivate. It answered something. And whatever answered back is still there.
Chapter 1. The Light Returns. November 14th, 2024. North Atlantic Shipping Lane C-19, 01:12 a.m. The first report was dismissed. The second was flagged. The third triggered Division 4. At 12:43 a.m., the cargo vessel Morning Tide transmitted a routine navigation correction request after encountering severe fog 11 nautical miles east of Blackwater Point. Standard procedure. A vessel in reduced visibility asking for updated coordinates. The kind of transmission that passed through maritime monitoring stations dozens of nights without anyone looking up from their coffee. The operator note attached to the transmission was not standard procedure. Lighthouse active. Beacon rotating every 13 seconds. Please confirm scheduled reactivation. There was no scheduled reactivation. Blackwater Point Lighthouse had been abandoned for over 30 decades. No electrical infrastructure remained on the island. No emergency systems, no backup generators, no solar installations. Nothing capable of powering a first-order Fresnel lens assembly. Yet over the next 4 hours, 7 separate vessels reported seeing the same thing. A rotating white beam cutting through the fog. Always, every 13 seconds. Always aimed toward open water. As if warning something away from shore, or guiding something in. Most people have never heard of Division 4. Officially, it never existed. Its records moved between shell departments for decades. Maritime Hazard Prevention, Coastal Infrastructure Survey, Atmospheric Observation Bureau. Different names, same locked doors. The organization specialized in incidents that resisted public explanation. Most cases were environmental, some were military. A small number defied categorization entirely. Blackwater Point fell into the last category. Had fallen there since 1811. The island sat 30 miles from the mainland, jagged volcanic stone surrounded by violent currents. No vegetation, no birds. Fishing crews avoided it whenever possible, and when the route didn't allow avoidance, they crossed the adjacent water quickly and did not look toward the rocks. Older sailors talked about Blackwater Point quietly and only after enough alcohol to make talking about it feel less like an invitation. What they said was that the fog around the island moved incorrectly. Not the way fog moves when wind shifts it. Incorrectly in a more fundamental sense. Purposefully. As though something was deciding where it should be. Nobody official had ever written this down. But even rumors begin somewhere. The earliest recorded mention dated to autumn 1811. A merchant vessel named the Orpheus was crossing open water on a clear night when the captain logged hearing a foghorn. There was no fog. The night was described as exceptionally clear, and there was no lighthouse at Blackwater Point in 1811. The lighthouse would not be built for another 53 years. The captain altered course toward the sound. That was the last log entry. The Orpheus was found 11 days later drifting 14 miles south of the island. Every lifeboat secured. Dinner on the galley table. Personal belongings untouched in every cabin. No signs of struggle. No signs of anything that would explain the absence of 11 men from a vessel that showed no reason for them to have left it. The official explanation blamed piracy. The sea has always been useful for burying bad explanations. The lighthouse was constructed in 1864. Construction manifests showed supply deliveries that exceeded the requirements of the recorded structure by a significant margin. No explanation was filed for the discrepancy. The project overseer's reports became shorter as construction progressed. His final 3 consisted of single sentences confirming work was continuing on schedule. His last report was dated 6 weeks before completion. After that, nothing. No death certificate, no resignation, no record of him existing anywhere after that final sparse confirmation. Only a handwritten note found decades later in a rain-damaged survey ledger, filed between 2 unrelated assessments, as though placed there someone who wanted it found eventually, but not immediately. The foundation descends farther than expected. The sentence appeared 3 times on the same page, each time in different handwriting. Division 4 analyst Mara Vale received the Blackwater incident package at 02:11 a.m. She had been awake for 19 hours. She opened the first vessel report, then the second, then the third. Every testimony matched. White rotating beam, heavy fog, 13-second interval, no visible personnel, no power source, no explanation because no explanation was available. She opened the archived Blackwater case files. Most were heavily redacted. Several were corrupted in ways that did not look like ordinary degradation. She worked through what remained in chronological order, building the history of the island the way she built every case, detail by detail, without conclusions until the details demanded them. One document stopped her. Keeper Incident Report, January 1989. The body of it was redacted to uselessness. The final paragraph had been missed. If the light resumes rotation, evacuation protocols must be enacted immediately. Under no circumstances should personnel respond to signals originating from the shoreline. She read it twice. Then, 1 line below, almost hidden under scan damage, a second sentence the redaction had also missed. It only imitates the beacon after it hears us. The office lights flickered. Somewhere deeper in the facility, an alarm began sounding. Not loud, not urgent, the kind of alarm that does not announce an emergency so much as mark a threshold being crossed. A single repeating tone, with no escalation and no end. Every 13 seconds. Mara sat very still. Then she picked up her phone and began making the calls she already understood, with the cold clarity that 19 sleepless hours sometimes produces, were going to change the remainder of her career, and possibly the remainder of considerably more than that. Outside the reinforced windows of Observation Sector C, the rain came down hard, and the sea was invisible in the dark. 30 miles out, a light with no power source rotated through the fog. Every 13 seconds. Patient as something that has never needed to be anything else.
Chapter 2. Blackwater Point. Every haunted place develops mythology. Most of it is nonsense. Stories people invent to give shape to fear, to make the unknown manageable by wrapping it in narrative, by giving it rules and origins and the comfort of causality. If the thing has a reason, then the thing has a limit. If it has a limit, then it can theoretically be survived. But sometimes the stories are not invention. Sometimes they are attempts. Warnings passed forward through generations by people who encountered something they could not explain and made the only choice available to them. Wrap it in language that would travel, that would stick, that would reach the people who came after them in the only form those people might accept and remember. Folklore, superstition, the kinds of stories that get told quietly and only to people deemed capable of taking them seriously. Blackwater Point had been accumulating those warnings for nearly 2 centuries. Nobody listened long enough to survive them. The storm surrounding Blackwater Point intensified before sunrise. It did not intensify the way Atlantic storms intensify, building gradually, tracking predictably, following the meteorological logic that experienced coastal crews read like a language they were born into. It intensified without logic, without progression. Radar systems along the eastern coastline began reporting interference patterns that the duty meteorologist at the coastal monitoring station described in her log with the careful understatement of a professional trying to stay within the boundaries of what her instruments could technically support.
as inconsistent with ordinary weather formation. Wave activity rose sharply despite stable barometric readings. The two data points contradicted each other in ways the equipment was not designed to reconcile. Commercial fishing crews working the pre-dawn hours reported hearing something beneath their hulls. Not the ocean, something within the ocean. A low-frequency vibration that one captain, a man with 23 years of North Atlantic experience who chose his words with the precision of someone who understood that imprecision in his profession had consequences, described as a ship engine turning over somewhere below the ocean floor. The resonance of something very large operating at depth, something mechanical in its rhythm, something that did not belong to any natural process he had encountered in 2 decades of working that water. The source could not be identified. At 0412 a.m., Division 4 officially sealed all civilian access routes surrounding Blackwater Point. The closure order cited hazardous maritime conditions and recommended all vessels maintain a minimum distance of 15 nautical miles from the Blackwater Point coordinates until further notice. That explanation was easier than the real one. The real one sat inside Archive Vault C, beneath 3 layers of classification that required sequential authorization from 2 senior officers and the division director to access. The real one had been sitting there for decades, accumulating additional layers each time a new incident occurred and required filing in a place where it would not create questions that Division 4 was not prepared to answer publicly. Blackwater Point had experienced incidents before. Many incidents. The 1811 disappearance of the Orpheus and its 11-man crew, the 1848 vanishing of 3 fishermen who had reported lights beneath the waterline the previous evening, the 1932 observation of the lighthouse beacon operating during a confirmed total power failure that lasted 9 hours, the 1966 disappearance of an entire coastal survey team, 4 people, fully equipped, experienced, gone without a physical trace of any kind. Most of these incidents had never been disclosed publicly. Several had never been disclosed internally. A small number existed only in documents that had been classified at levels so restrictive that the act of accessing them required leaving a record, and leaving a record meant that someone senior would know you had been looking, and knowing someone had been looking at certain Blackwater files had a history within Division 4 of producing consequences that nobody had ever formally documented, but that everyone with sufficient tenure understood implicitly. Some doors stay closed, not because of the locks on them, but because of what happened to the last people who opened them. Chapter 3. The Tape Archive. The handwriting did not match any Division 4 personnel file in the system. Someone had written it in blue ink, pressed hard, the letters slightly uneven, as though the hand holding the pen had not been entirely steady. The word was "listen." Inside the weatherproof case, wrapped tightly around the cassette itself, was a strip of paper torn from a larger page. Different handwriting, smaller. The letters pressed so hard into the paper they had nearly torn through. The way writing looks when the person doing it needs you to understand that what they are telling you is not a suggestion. Do not play this after dark. Do not play this alone. Do not play this more than once. The Division 4 played it 3 times. The first analyst was a man named Percival Oakes, 11 years with the division, solid record, no prior incidents. He signed the equipment log at 9:14 a.m., took the tape to the audio processing room and closed the door behind him. At 9:58 a.m., he left the building through the east fire exit. He did not sign out, he did not take his coat, he did not take his keys, his phone, or his division identification. He walked through the fire door, and the door closed behind him, and the alarm sounded for 11 seconds and then stopped. And nobody went after him, because nobody realized immediately that gone meant gone and not stepped outside for air. His car was still in the parking structure 3 days later. He did not file a report. He has not been seen since. The second analyst was brought in specifically because of Oakes. Dr. Frida Sull, sound specialist, background in acoustic analysis and psychological research, chosen because her training emphasized detachment, the discipline of observing disturbing material behind glass, processing without absorbing, cataloging without being changed by what was cataloged. She listened to all 44 minutes in a single session. She took notes throughout in her precise, even handwriting. She did not remove the headphones once. When the tape ended, she sat without moving for 11 minutes. The monitoring camera recorded this. 11 minutes of complete stillness, her hands flat on the table in front of her, her eyes opened and focused on nothing. Then, she tore a page from her notebook, wrote one sentence, folded the paper once, and slid it through the gap beneath the observation window to the Division 4 officer seated on the other side. The sentence read, "It already knew we were going to find this." She declined to elaborate. She declined to submit a full report. She requested an immediate transfer to the Meteorological Observation Unit in the Scottish Highlands, inland, high altitude, as far from any coastline as the Division 4 network extended. And when the approval was approved, she packed her desk that same afternoon and did not say goodbye to anyone. She still sends annual performance reviews. They are technically flawless. They contain no personal remarks of any kind. Division 4 considers this acceptable. The third analyst was the most senior person on site, 20 years with the division, decorated, known internally for a quality that her colleagues described, depending on how well they knew her, as exceptional composure or the successful replacement of composure with something more durable. She had worked the Dunmere case, the Vellum disappearances, the Caro retrieval. She had read things in basement archive rooms that ended the careers of everyone else in those rooms, and she had walked out of each one, filed her report, and come back the next morning. She listened to the first 40 minutes without visible reaction. She listened to minute 40 through 43 without visible reaction. At minute 43, something changed in the recording. The monitoring officer behind the glass noted this in his log, but could not describe what changed because the change was not in any element he could point to specifically. The audio waveform looked the same. The volume was the same. But something in the room shifted in the last 4 minutes, and the shift was visible in the only instrument available to measure it, which was the face of the woman sitting at the table with the headphones on. She listened to the final 4 minutes. She removed the headphones. She sat for a moment. Then she stood, straightened her jacket, walked to the monitoring window, and asked quietly and without drama to be reassigned to any Division 4 posting located more than 200 miles from the nearest coastline. The request went to the senior officer on duty. He approved it without question, without review, without the standard 14-day processing period that reassignment requests normally required. He approved it in 4 minutes. That almost never happens. Nobody asked him why. Nobody wanted to know what he understood about those final 4 minutes that made 4 minutes feel like the correct response time. The tape was sealed after the third analyst left the building. It was placed in a classification category that required director-level sign-off to access and logged in the Blackwater case file under a subheading that had not previously existed in the Division 4 taxonomy. The subheading read, "Materials that listen back." It was the only entry under that heading. For now.